Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us again today. I hope everybody had a good weekend. Today is Tuesday, August 1st, and welcome back to another one of our ACT webinars, virtual user groups. Today's topic is going to be about database customizations, custom layouts, and custom fields, and how you can build your ACT screen to look exactly like the way that you want it to do for your company. So as always, I am working today out of the ACT 2017 demo database, and I am looking at the default business card contact layout. Layouts within ACT are stored in this layout dropdown right here, and you can have a separate layout for contacts, groups, companies, and opportunities. Each one of those four entities has its own set of fields, and they can be rearranged and mixed around in any way that you see fit. The layouts that are stored here are available for everybody at your company who's using the same database. If you build your new layouts using the methods that I'm going to show you today, then the ones that you create will be visible for everybody else to select from their drop-down list. And likewise, if you edit one of the existing ones, everybody else's will update itself accordingly. If I mix through some of the ones that come with this, right here we're using the basic contact layout, and you can see some very pale gray fonts and the layout with these three columns. This ACT demo database comes with an ACT demo layout. This one's got an image on there with a nice company logo, as well as some other fields thrown in here with a slightly different fonts and color scheme. And you can really customize a lot here. You can have your fields with your own custom logos for your company. You can have custom color schemes, and of course, custom fields based on things that you need, such as equipment or machine rentals or product interests or previous purchases. We use examples of ACT licenses and number of users. It's really limitless in terms of where your imagination can go. Some of you that may be using very high resolution desktop displays might see some of your fields, such as this phone number field here, for example, get kind of cut off or they look too small. When you see that happen, using this layout designer is a really good way to correct that. You can just expand those or make them a little bit larger. So the first thing I want to talk about is how can you create new fields in the database? As we look across the screen here, we have our fields on top, and there's also the panels on the bottom that are organized currently in this order. I've got notes and history and activities. The layout designer can actually change and reorganize these as well, and we'll get to that. There are extra tabs for user fields where you can, ACT comes predefined with 10 user fields that you can edit the name of and put whatever you'd like into here. You can also add unlimited tabs of your own for more additional info. So generally, the top half of the contact screen is for your very essential primary contact information that nearly 100% of everybody in your database, you want these fields filled out. And then you can use these extra tabs below to fill in supplemental information that you might be using for a contact. To add new fields down here and to change your fields, you have to be an administrator to do this, and your database has to be locked. You have to go to Tools and Define Fields. Right up here in the Tools menu. Now, because I am the only person using this database and I'm in the demo, the Define Fields window came right up. Some of you, I mentioned that the database needs to be locked. If there's anybody else currently using ACT, ACT doesn't want you to interfere with field names and field types while other people are using the database. So it will give you a warning of who else is currently logged into the database at the company, and it will actually give you an opportunity to give them a boot and kick them right out from there. This is best done usually when off hours or late in the day or very early in the morning when people aren't using ACT. So my Define Fields window tells me I can create, edit, or delete fields. And right now I'm looking at fields for contacts. So contacts, as I said, can have their own set of fields, such as a name and an email address and a birth date, for example. We also have fields for companies, which have their own sets, and many of these are linked and similar, things like address and city, state, zip, but companies can also have things like revenue, region, SIC code, ticker symbol. Those are some default fields that come with ACT for companies. And similarly, opportunities have all sorts of fields related to totals and sales probabilities and things like that. If we want to add a new field on here, I can use my create new field checkbox, or in the sidebar, create new field. The field name is how this field name will appear when you're using apt searches. So hopefully you're all familiar that when you use the lookup box here on the left sidebar and you have your drop downs and you're searching for things like state contains New York, for example. State in that case would be the field name. If we give our field name something here, I will call this one, let's see. I'll call it CRM system. Good example one. And then for the field data type, we have to say what kind of field this is. Character is probably the most common. That's a short text box. That's just like one of the ones that you see up here. It's a little bit limited in length, but it's really just considered for short text. Normally, you can set what the limit is. 32 or 64 characters is probably the most common. But there's other field types. You can do things like a date or a date time. So a date might just be that includes a date in there, and a date time would be a date with a timestamp after it as well. This could be maybe if you have a expiration of a contract or something like that, could be a field that you have. We can have address fields. This will pre-build for you all these, the address line 1, 2, city, state, and zip all connected to each other at once if you choose those. There's an email field, a number field, which is for storing not phone numbers, but numbers that are usually have a comma separator every 3 digits for every 1,000. Phone numbers, picture, where you can actually upload photos into a field, type, URL address, or yes, no. These are checkboxes. The yes, no checkboxes are used very commonly as well. Memo is similar to a character field where you have character is short text where anything can be typed in there, but normally limited to 32 or 64 characters, whereas a memo is a large text field. They usually appear as a larger box and you can type freely into them. Some people like to put a memo field up there and call it notes so that they can have a notes record on top for the contact. I prefer to put my notes on the notes tab, but different strokes for different folks. In this case, I'm going to choose a character field for my CRM system. We have some options down below where we can say how we want this field behavior to run. I will allow this to be blank. If you uncheck that, the field becomes mandatory and nobody will be able to create a record without filling that in. It certainly has its uses, but just be careful that you are wise enough to see 100% of every circumstance that there will never be a contact that doesn't need this filled in. Because sometimes if you don't allow people to put in blank fields, it results in your salespeople just putting random keyboards, random junk in there just to make the alert go away. So be aware that that can happen. Generate history will make it so that every time this field value is changed, we'll log into the history. Sometimes people do that if they do have a notes field, like I said on top with a memo. That's probably the most common time I see people use the generate history feature. Primary field means that if you duplicate the record using your contacts and duplicate record, there's an option here to duplicate a contact that you're looking at. And I've shown you how you can say duplicate data from all fields or from just primary fields. If you choose the primary field, then this one will be brought over. And then the drop-down list. I can say create a new list right from here. There's also some predefined ones, things like cities, or these are other lists that I've used before elsewhere in the database. These are actually probably created by apt. Job titles, product types, states. I'll say create new list. I want my character field, I want the CRM system to be a drop-down. I've got to give my drop-down a list name, so I'll call this CRM systems. This will be a character list because all of my CRM systems are going to be text. They could also be numbers, decimals, or currencies. Character is certainly the most common for drop-downs almost every time. These options will allow users to edit items in the list so that when they're looking at the dropdown, if they see a value, they want to type something in that's not in the list, they can say edit list values with a button right on the bottom. Or if you don't want anybody to be able to add things or change things that are in the list, you can disallow that behavior. Automatically add new items users enter to the list. I generally don't like this one, but what that does is that rather than having to click on the drop down and say edit list values if they want to add something else in there, it will just allow somebody to type whatever they want into the list freely, and it will automatically be saved if it's not in there already. I see people then mistype, and typos and spelling errors get added to the list whenever you do that. I think that allowing people to edit is usually fine because they're more careful about what they're putting in there rather than automatically adding it. Okay, moving along, so on our drop-down list, we can add new items to the list from the enter drop-down list values. And again, this is also within my define field screen. But if I go to add and say some CRM systems here, we've got, I'll say Act V19, Premium, get Act V19 Pro, and we'll have Act V18. That's as far as I'll need to go. Your drop-down list can show just the value is the important part. If you just want a drop-down list with single values, you can optionally add a description with it and say if you want a description to appear alongside the value. So sometimes people will have something they'll say a client type, and they might have an A client, B client, or C client, and those would be the values. But they could have then descriptions for exactly what those are, so that somebody else using the database would know. You can also import drop-down list items. I'm not going to do that today, but if you'd like to import list items, you can certainly ask me for help. It's useful if you're going to be entering 50 or 100 items and you don't want to add and type them all in individually. You can import them right from the spreadsheet. For drop-down lists, I can say if I want to restrict selections to only values in the list and not allow people to pick anything outside of it. If I do multi-select, then rather than being an individual drop-down list, my list would have checkboxes next to each item where you can select one or multiple values. Certainly useful for very many lists that need that. Show descriptions. These are the descriptions that I just mentioned. If I back up here, this description column, you can optionally have that column on or off. If you don't have descriptions, then leave this unchecked. And enable type ahead. That's a convenience feature, so you can type just the first couple letters of the value in the field, and it will automatically fill in the rest of the list value for you. Convenient. We're on our last step here. For every field, this isn't just for character fields or for drop-down lists, we can optionally select what the default value is. So when you create a new contact record, if you have a new field that you've made, regardless of if it's a character field or a text field or a checkbox, you can say what the default value is. And if you'll have somebody, the rule of thumb is 51%. If you think that 51% or more of contacts that are created in the database would have this field be a certain value, then it's a good idea to type that in for the default value. It would save some users some time. You can type in whatever value you'd like. In this case, I'm going to keep it blank. And then the field length, how many characters long should the maximum length be? It's a good idea to try to keep this number as low as possible because the way that the SQL database, how it structures the data, if I say that I want this field to be 500 characters in length, then it's actually reserving 500 bits of text for every single record in the database, whether or not I'm using it all or not. I've effectively just taken up that space regardless. So if you're going to have a field where the data entered into it, for example, maybe an email address, if you think that, okay, even in a very crazy scenario would never get longer than 50, then just keep it at 50. You want to usually try to keep them as minimum as possible. In an email, maybe you even want to keep it down to 30, but okay. The last screen is these field triggers so that when you change a field, you can automatically launch other actions to happen. It's kind of spotty, but there's a lot you can do with it. I've seen it done before. If you're interested in that, talk to me later. Whew, and finish. Hope everyone's still with me. Get the brain turning on Tuesday morning here. So that's a little bit about how you can customize fields. If you're not sure about what you saw today, or it looks like a lot, then please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm more than happy to help coach you through the correct ways to define fields and what you're trying to accomplish. Before you do any of this, I probably should have said this at the start, it's always a good idea to have a backup handy. You can do that in Act by going to File and then Backup Database. Can't show you because this window is up here. But if you back up your database first, just in case anything goes haywire, you can always undo it. Similarly, if there's fields in here that you don't need, some of you might look through your defined fields list and see a whole lot of things from some past project that you were doing that are no longer relevant, and you can delete them out of there by highlighting them and choosing delete field. Some of the fields are mandatory required, but you can delete fields out of there that you don't need. Anyways, when I close my define field screen, Act notifies me, you've added new fields to the database. Would you like to modify your layout now? And this will bring us to part 2 of today's call with customizing the layouts. I can go ahead and say yes, and it would launch me right into the layout designer. But instead, I'm going to say no, so I can show you where the layout designer is. It's up here under tools, and right below define fields is design layout. And if I say contact, sure enough, it opens up the Act Layout Designer, and it brings up the current Act layout that I was just looking at on the screen. Except now this is all editable. So I'm going to first expand this a bit larger to give me a bit more workspace to see here by using these bars on the side to pull them out. And from within here, all of these fields are different boxes that you can select and drag and drop and move around. So for example, if I wanted to put this over here, that looks ugly and awful, but I can sit there and drag and drop and put these fields wherever I'd like, mess it all up. Similarly, I can draw a square by clicking and holding with my mouse if I want to move multiple things at once, or if I want to like grab a whole block of fields and say, I want all of these to come down a little bit. I can do that. And I'm going to show you some tricks for getting these to align up perfectly in just a moment. So to add new fields onto my layout that I've created, just by simply adding the fields to the database where I went into that defined field does not automatically add them to the layout. They've been added to the back-end infrastructure of the database, but the layout is simply a human interface that is easy for us to work with and enter the data into. We haven't added those fields in yet though. So in my left sidebar, I can click on field, and I have a crosshair when I drag this over onto the layout, and if I click, it will show me all of the fields in my database that are not already shown on the record. CRM system is one of them. I can say include a label. The label is the text box that comes to the left of the field. And I'm going to say yes. I always like to include a label by default. And now CRM system is added on there. We're going to have to stylize this if we want to make it look like the other ones though, and not stand out like a sore thumb. A little note about labels. These labels that are to the left of the field are not necessarily the field name. For example, well, here we go. We've got state is its own field and zip code is its own separate field in this spot. But the label to the left of it just says state/zip, because the labels, you can type whatever you want. It's nothing more than a descriptor that when you're looking at this layout, the field could be blank. It could have nothing written in there. And so people won't know what goes in there. You can just put the label to the left of it. Or you don't even need to have a label, but that's a bad practice. It can say whatever you'd like though. Some people get confused because they'll have their label say something different and it can be totally different than the field name. And when they try to do lookup operations, it can confuse. So I want to make my CRM system look the same as my other fields, the same size. I could try to do that by dragging and dropping and seeing if I can get it close. But another interesting way that you can do it is if you select multiple fields. For example, if I hold this one This is a little bit of keyboard magic here, but if you hold down Control allows you to select multiple objects as you click on them. I'm holding down Control while I click on these, and it individually is selecting everything that I click on. If I select CRM system and then another field that's the same size that I want, I can go to Format, Make Same Size, and I can make them the same width or height or both. And now it makes it the precise same dimensions as the other one. Did I lose anybody yet? If so, that's really okay. I knew today would be a little bit more advanced, but I just want to show you some examples of things that we can do. Other things that you can change with a field could be the font and the size of the text in there. So I can see the other fonts that came with this database. They are Tahoma 9.75. So I'll select my CRM system field. The default was Tahoma 8, so I'm just going to change that to 975. Same thing with the label to the left of it. Make that a bit bigger. I can align the text to the right so that it lines up with these. Use my Control Select again, and I can actually say Align Left. These alignments will move your fields around and nudge them slightly. So for example, if I wonk that out of alignment there, I can say that I want to align this one all the way to the left perfectly with this by using these alignment options. I can align two fields together with the tops as well, and I can move them as a group up and down. There's a lot that you can do with making sure that all of these layouts line up perfectly with all your ducks in a row. It's very easy to just drop a field on there and then have them all be out of alignment. You can spend a long time afterwards customizing these all to look exactly as you'd like. There's also borders. It looks like they have a thick black border around the box. So this border drop down gives me the option for that. As well as background colors, I can change the color of the template. So that was editing my template where I can put a field on there. There's also drawing options where I can add an image. So for example, if I press image and drop my crosshair on there, I can put an image right here. And view my properties window. I can select my image right in here where this is going to be. I can find it off of my computer. I don't know, pick some picture there. Some stock photo I have. You can put any picture. I think ideally you'd have your company logo or something you can put in there and add an image to your layout. Something maybe you want custom done. Be happy to help do it. You can also change the tabs along the bottom, as I promised. If you go to Edit, Tabs, we have tabs here like Notes, History, Activities, and Opportunities. I usually reorder these. I don't believe this is the default order. I like Notes and History to be my first tabs. So you can select them and use Move Up and Move Down using this to put your most important tabs first. That's all done through your layout. You can add custom tabs like that user fields or maybe a machine info or extra fields that you need on there. You can do that with adding a tab so that you have more play space to add new fields on there. You can also get rid of tabs that you don't use very often by hiding them using the left and right arrows. So if you really never use secondary contacts or relationships or some of these other tabs, some of them are mandatory, but you can reorder the tabs. We have a question. Changing the tabs or the tab order will change it for all users. That is correct. That is correct, Ray. That is part of the layout. So if I save this layout right here, it will update the act demo for all the changes I've made, such as adding CRM system, and it will update the tab changes. It does a full save of everything you see here on the screen. If you don't want to overwrite your existing layout, you can do File, Save As, and this is your Act Database Layouts folder. It will find it for you either on the server or on your remote database. Even if you're using this on a remote database, they will synchronize up to the main server. you can save this layout as its own name. So if I wanted to call this Act Demo 2 so that I didn't interfere with the original one, I can certainly do that and save. And it will be available for everybody else. So if I go ahead and close out of my layout designer, the Act screen is going to flicker and refresh a little bit. And here it is, nothing too fancy because I'm still using Act Demo. You can tell people, oh, but here's this new Act Demo 2. And there she is, CRM system is added and everything is saved up within there. A few other notes that I didn't cover yet. If I go back into my layout designer, we have something called the tab order. The tab order is what happens when you're in a field filling out data, and some people like to use the tab key to move through one field to the next as they're entering data. The computer doesn't know exactly how these fields are laid out, and so the tab order can sometimes get messed up, especially when I'm reorganizing things, like my CRM system is out of alignment here. You generally want your tab order to follow a logical path so that people are pressing the tab key as they fill these things out. Makes it much easier for entering data. That is also done within your layout. It's under the View, Tab Stops, and I can say Show Tab Stops, and they're all listed here. I can clear them out to reset my tab order, so there's numbers next to each one. I see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 18, 19, 75. This is the order or the path that pressing tab is going to move my cursor through. Some of you might be nodding your head like, oh yeah, we customized our layout a long time ago and the cursor jumps around all over the place randomly. This is how you fix it. Under View and Tab Stops, you show them, and then I usually clear them. They're all gone. My cursor is back into a crosshair, and I can just click on each field on the layout. Have fun. Go through in a logical order of how you believe that your cursor should go from field to field as you click around the tab key here on the screen. Ta-da! When you're done, you can go back to Tab Stops and uncheck that box and save it up. I gotta tell people that's something I'll never forget to do again. It was my final project at UB for an MIS class, and we had to build a database, and I had almost a perfect score, except they ruined my tab order. I'll never forget that one. Ray asked, does the database need to be locked to use the layout designer? Excellent question. It does not. No. But if you do edit an existing layout, I do recommend that you do a save as, just so you don't interfere with somebody's layout while they're using it. I don't know that that would actually cause any problems. I've edited layouts while people are using them before, but it's probably best to just avoid that anyways as a potential failure point. You can use the layout designer for any layout without locking the database. It will refresh next time the person moves away from a contact record or moves the screen and comes back, or changes their layout and comes back. It would automatically update for them. It's only the field editor that requires the database to be locked. Generally, you got to get all your fields in a row before you go to design your layout. Okay. Thank you all for joining today. I'm going to open the line for questions, so be ready for those of you that are on the call that your audio may come through. Any questions today? If not, thank you very much for joining us. For those of you watching on YouTube, you can join us live every Tuesday morning. I'll have the link and connection instructions in the description. I'd love to have more people coming in live to ask good questions that I may forget to mention during the session. Again, my name is Stephen from 12-3. Thank you all for joining me and have a great day. Goodbye.